I'm Tom Lampe. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Department of Public Safety Communications, and I'm also the Chairman of the Iowa Statewide Interoperability Board, other known as Isicsb, right? Been on the board since 2011, and I've been with the Department of Public Safety as a state trooper, lieutenant, for about 30 years. Next year will be my 30th year. Had a couple years there where I was a police officer in the city of Waverly. If anybody knows where Reedland is, Reedland was my very first town of 650 people. Was my first job. I couldn't even buy bullets. I had to go and have somebody buy my bullets for me because I was only 19 at the time. So, worked my way through, so I've been around a little bit. My hair used to be black before ISICS, and now it's starting to turn gray, and I'm sure it'll be white in the next 3 years when I retire. But it's been fun, it's been a ride. I'm gonna give you a little bit of taste of the ISICS system. We're actually gonna do a little hands-on and let you hear the capabilities, what a statewide system will do from this room on our calling channel that we've established. But before we do that, I'm gonna give you a quick slideshow of just a little general overview of what the board is doing. So under the code of 80, 28, and 29, we're mandated to do some things. Now, I've just picked out 3 of probably the most important ones, is to review and monitor the communications performance of the system, right? So, and the service levels on behalf of your agencies that join. Identify the sources for the longer term funding to keep this thing moving. And also for the communications interoperability projects and all the available and future assets that will leverage everything we need and the incentives for that. Okay, so on the last one, we have to make sure there's adequate funding to keep this thing running and sustainable, provide incentives to support the maintenance and expansion of the regional efforts and the implementation of the system itself. That's a list of 3 of 14 mandates under 28 and 29 of the Iowa Code that it doesn't say you may do this, it says you shall. With the ultimate objective of building this statewide system, which we're currently at, and you'll see how the progress is coming on that. A little bit about our committees. The Operations Committee, probably one of the most active committee that will really get the hands-on with the system. Operations is operations, right? Everything is operations when it comes to radio communications and how you use things. They're responsible for some policy development and approval for the use of the regional talk groups that we've all established, the statewide talk groups in Iowa, the protocol for using the interoperability channels, PSAP training assistance will be offered with the training committee and through operations, where you can go to workshops and webinars that the board will help support and funding for your mileage and the meals to attend those, as well as the training if we bring in an instructor. The board is designed to do that we have a own fund to operate that way. They're also working on, that you'll see very shortly here, is a letter to let our PSAPs know that by July and August of 2018, this system's going to be live and running. We're going to sign off on this thing in July. So the fall of 18, it's supposed to be July of 18. Melvin from Motorola tells me it's going to be July of 18, but who knows with projects and weather how that could be pushed faster or a little bit past. But we're counting on the fall of 2018 for this system to be running. So we have to let our PSAPs know that the system's activated and that those regional talk groups are hot and available for use. So that letter will explain to say, hey, just to let you know, you've got to start preparing for some of this stuff, at least for the interoperability portion, to access those talk groups. And we'll show you some ways to do that. I got 3 or 4 examples of how you do that. There's lots of ways to do it, to access just for the interoperability purposes. If you choose that that's all you want to do as a level 1 user, there's 4 levels, okay? So the next committee, the user group committee, is also a very busy committee. They approve the radios. So if you apply to ISICS, they approve the radios and any infrastructure you add because you want to do more than just interoperability. You want to use it for your day-to-day needs because you happen to have good coverage in your county, and maybe you have to add a couple towers. You want to really take advantage of that 95% mobile coverage you have, and to get your portable coverage, you want to join for your operational use, not just interoperability. You want to use day-to-day operations with it too. Once you have operability, you naturally will get the interop piece. They meet monthly before the board meeting. If I get a letter from a county that wants to join, I send that to the Isicsb committee. They're queued up, and then they put on, and then they get with that agency to understand what their needs are, what level they're desiring to be. And we'll have Sean show you the process of joining ISICS with the link on the website and go through that form so you're all aware of how to do that. That is chaired by a local public safety agency and vice chaired by a local public safety agency for the user group committee. In fact, most of our committee members are chaired by locals. There's maybe one or two committees that have a state representative as the chair, but most of it is locally driven and locally chaired by these committees. We have a Motorola representative on that user group committee, which is an engineer. So when we have radios come on, we have to make sure that the loading is okay and everything works properly, and that manufacturer's radio works and is accepted for use on the radio system. If you add any infrastructure to the system, what's that going to do? So it has to all jive when you come on to make sure that everything's going to work properly for you and it works well. That's also chaired by a local rep. So training committee. We have a training committee, and we'll sponsor ISICS interoperability and training on the interoperability talk groups. They take care of, this thing is where, radio user training for subscriber units, council training if you need it. This is all set up with our committees to actually help you get with the interoperability piece of accessing those talk groups, how you use them, the equipment to use them. We could train dispatchers for best practices. All sorts of things that the training committee can provide through the board. And that's also chaired by a local representative. Technology committee. This is like one click behind here. Okay, they deal with encryption. They're doing that now. It's a big topic right now with encryption and how we're going to, if we're going to put encryption on those regional talk groups, how many, how you're going to use them, all the dynamics of when you start putting encryption on radios. What does it take to maintain those keys and encryption? All that's got to come into play before we're going to light this, those interoperability talk groups in the regions with encryption. There's a lot more too than just throwing encryption on it. There's a lot more behind the stuff, the scenes that has to take place before we allow that to happen. It'll happen. It's just we need to get the engine running, the car driven, drive it down the road a little bit, and then start adding these features that we can add to this system. With the programming of the talk groups, they work on that. They work on the standards. They keep up with the standards on the P25. This is a P25 700 megahertz phase 2 system. They work with the STR, our strategic reserve trailer. We do have one trailer. It's the West trailer right now that has an actual 6-pack in it. What we mean by a 6-pack, it's an actual base station with was it 4 channels, Melvin? A 6-channel site on wheels that we just got operational about 2 weeks ago. So that's an actual site that we're going to throw up in the air. And all of our trailers eventually are going to need at least the capability to access the ISICS with some channels so that we can offload that to the site so we can have more users. So in theory, when that site's operational, it's in site trunking, so everybody's radio tunes to that site for an event so you don't overload the system if we have a major event. Like if we had like a RAGBRAI or something, you could pull it up, throw the antenna in the air, you got site trunking, everybody could be using the radios around there and use the system. If you're close to a core where you could physically run the plug, plug it into the switch in the trailer and plug it and get it to the path to the core, that actually adds to the system for another site. So it's either site trunking or you can add it to the system. They work on the frequency coordination and licensing. That's quite a task once in a while when it comes to that. Our governance committee, they also work with the policy development and review of the ISICS. They all review the rules of the admin rules of Isicsb yearly to make sure they're up to date, up to speed. They work on our statewide communications interoperability plan, also known as SCIP. We just finished that. That was approved last board meeting. You need a SCIP in order to receive any funding from the federal government if we have grants. It's also a good idea to have the SCIP when you have a statewide system. The SCIP that we had before was always a concept. It was very hard to develop a SCIP when you don't have a statewide system. When you have a statewide system, all the SCIP things work nice. They mesh together. So finance, they work on everything finances, and all the money funnels through DPS as a source to pay the bills and apply for the grants. So everything runs through the board. DPS, I should say. Come on. Is it my? There we go. They review grants. If we get grants that come through the Isicsb, gives the report to the board, grant funds and our operational funds, review the budget, monthly expenditure, report to the board what our balances is in our ISICB grant. ISICB grant right now we're operating off is for FirstNet outreach. It's been since 2013. We're operating off that. That's coming to an end. We're now going into ISICB 2, which is also FirstNet, strictly FirstNet related. So they review those reports. They review all our major purchases of the board monthly. It's chaired by a local at-large member and vice chaired by a DPS rep that's inside of finance. Funding funnels through the DOT and the DPS. This is under joint purview by the Iowa Code 82028 and 29. The board, the DPS and DOT, basically what that means is we help with the finance and funnels that money through to the board. It's under joint purview, we share. Sometimes the DOT doesn't like to pay as much as I'd like them to, but we do. Future sustainable funding, we always look for funding, whatever grants we can try to obtain to keep this thing rolling for either FirstNet or the ISICS system. And the legislative fiscal year funding request, that like last year, every year we have to make sure we get our funding request into the state so we get our appropriation every year. So outreach, we have our chair here actually, and she wanted to speak, but I had to kind of tame her down. She really, really wanted to speak. Regional talk group workshops or training announcements, she pushes out to all the entities to make sure that everybody knows what the board is doing. If we have any workshops or training announcements to come up, she makes sure she does that. She distributes all the material and information to all of public safety. She makes sure our website is updated, can constant current information, funneling it through DPS to make sure we get our updates done. FirstNet outreach, she helps with Sean with this and the 5 others that are about to occur across the state. Conference or conventions or booths, supported ISICS and the FirstNet Initiative. We were at the Iowa EMS thing here a couple weeks ago. We've been to all kinds of things across the state with the ISICS support and the FirstNet Initiative. And that's chaired by Ellen, who's the local representative here. We got a lot to do. By June of 18, I'd like to have all these policies and protocols in place. We can't light this up without some rules, right? And the board governs those rules by locals and state representatives to establish what we can do and what we can't do on this system, and just some guidance, right? You can't do it without that. We have a standards working group that we established to look over and get best practices from other states for a baseline. They've already made the mistakes. They've already developed the policies. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So we beg, borrow, and steal from other states and kind of adapt it to what we need for ISICS in Iowa. There's probably at least 30 to 40 that we have to get in place by July before we light this system up. So we have some guidance for not only the PSAPs, but for the users and those regional talk groups. The standard subcommittee meets to review those, to adapt the policies for Iowa, cut and paste. So once in a while we cut and paste, but we have to adapt it. Just because we pull a policy from Minnesota or Ohio or Indiana, we have to make darn sure that that policy applies to the ISICS system in Iowa, because all states are different. The governance committee then presents that completed policy to Isicsb at our regular monthly board meeting, and then we post it on our website. You don't see, if there's not a whole lot of them on there right now. We're still working on them. So the typical ISICS customer for operability/interoperability use. Full benefits. You get the full benefits of the system statewide. I'm going to stand over here. I'll have to reach. Full talk group access, full dispatch capabilities, your operability, and naturally you get interoperability with that if you choose to go operational. Guaranteed coverage of 95% at least minimum coverage across Iowa mobile. There's no user fees, there's no maintenance fees unless you put more equipment on our system, on the state system, then you're in charge of your own maintenance. But the baseline system that we're providing, that the state is providing, there is no maintenance fees on that. That's already taken care of with the contract that we signed. Statewide coverage with this system. We've negotiated during the contract a 50% discount on the radios if you choose to buy radios. You have full control over your talk groups in all your counties or all your cities. Whatever you choose to do, that's your stuff. We have no desire to control any of your stuff, nor do we have the staff, nor do we have the time. It's your stuff, your talk groups, your area, you run it. Total interoperability and access, you can do that in a few ways here. And we'll talk about that today, and one of them is sitting right there. Option one, you could either give you a full dispatch console, you can integrate that into a system, connect to the core. That's usually a level 2, 3, or 4 user. Option two, you could have a mobile radio, just a physical mobile radio sitting on top of your PSAP, grab the signal over the air, which is sometimes called a control station. You can wire it or wireless, that's a level 1 user. Or option three, you could just simply put a portable radio at the PSAP over the air signal, level 1. Remember, it starts at the PSAP level. As long as you can access those regional talk groups, when LEA phases out in a few years, those are the regional talk groups is what we're going to use, so the new LEA, so to speak. So as long as you can get to those, you're good. There's lots of ways to do that. Option 4, you could have a consulate, which is what that is, and into your current radio system within the county during emergencies. So basically, if you want to patch that consulate into your council and patch the regional Iowa calling, which you'll hear today, one into your ops channel on your VHF, you can do that during that emergency, during the chase, during the flood, whatever you need to do to patch that in so those regional talk groups are being used, even though you still didn't join the system for operational use day to day and go full bore, level 1, you can still patch your stuff into your ops for that event. Whoop. How did that happen? So we had 14 years we've been working on this stuff. Since 2004, there was a committee formed to study the statewide system in Iowa and what we would need to do this, right? So in 2007, the Isicsb was formed. In 2009, they came up with a master plan, spent $1 million on what the state should look like with a statewide system. In 2011, there were some RFIs sent out to get what vendors could provide us to build this. In 2013, the RFP was issued for the system. In 2015, we signed the contract to construct it. In 2016, they shipped it to us to Des Moines. In 2016, the metro area has been activated for NGA. We actually used it for the state fair. In 2016, the tower construction continued in other parts of the state, and the tower construction is still continuing. And today, I think I'm accurate on this, it's 78% towers in the air, 78%. 2018, we'll do the testing. In the spring of 2018, the system testing when the leaves are on the trees. And like I said earlier, in 2018, the fall system acceptance will occur. And then we'll be hopefully live and have all those policies in place. And once you get to see the system and use it, today we have one site in Waterloo on Highway 20 there. That's our state site that we've had for years. We just lit that up a month ago. So that is in site trunking right now. So our goal is to get a whole bunch of them lit up in site trunking at least by the end of the year. The other one in the next few weeks will probably be Marion County. We're going to light that up in site trunking. And as soon as we keep going, as soon as there's power to the site, and as soon as we're ready to go and Melvin gets his batteries installed and his antennas and dishes on there, not necessarily the dishes, but at least the antennas, we'll throw that into site trunking so you can get kind of a taste. If you need some radios, we can supply a couple of radios for you. And so you can get a taste of at least the quality of the signal and some of the coverage, but you don't want to bank on just that site because it's an island. When it's in site trunking, it's an island. So you can't base your coverage just on the one site because none of the other ones are talking to each other yet. So, but that's what's happening now. The other initiative, FirstNet. I'm going to show you this video. If you don't know what FirstNet is, you'll get a real good taste of what it is here. And we'll have Tim Pierce from FirstNet before in the afternoon, straight from FirstNet. I'll give you a little bit of progress on what that is occurring. That's a National Public Safety Broadband Network that kind of complements the ISICS system in a way with your data needs, okay?
My husband's having a heart attack. Brooke,
we're going to start CPR on him, okay? I'm going to tell you what to do.
Okay.
Are you right next to him?
Yeah.
Okay, put him flat on the floor on his back.
Okay.
Expose his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Fire!
What's on fire?
80 Bassett Road. My house. Oh my God! I am on the phone with them.
Hear from the 984. I only want to hear from that supervisor.
Okay, Delta 984, here's what I need. I want ring road cleared so I can get ambulances out, okay?
At FirstNet, we're building the next generation in public safety communications. A broadband network for America's first responders by America's first responders. This is our story, where we are in development, and where we're going in the very near future.
When we build this network, and we will build this network, it's going to revolutionize public safety.
You're going to be able to do things you should have been able to do a decade ago. Scanning fingerprints, checking them against databases with handheld devices, downloading floor plans of burning buildings, sending photos and videos from an accident scene ahead to the ER room so instantly they're ready and prepared to know what they're coming. You know, my grandkids have been able to do this with their iPhones for a while.
It's such a common sense idea. It is so desperately needed. People so want it. I'll tell you, this room, when we had the hearing on it, was nothing but first responders. I mean, they're just totally want it, and I do too.
Change is not easy to make, and it's menacing to people that have done it a certain way for a long, long time. I don't hold it against them. I think the signal is, you know what? We're on the move.
Public safety must be allocated sufficient spectrum so that a national interoperable public safety wireless broadband network can finally be built.
When this network goes in place, we will see the innovation and creativity of public safety all across the country, where they step up and solve local issues, local situations that basically lower their cost or serve the public better or increase their own safety.
We need a broadband network that can be built to mission-critical standards. We need a network that can survive a natural disaster and that won't be subject to problems of commercial overload. In short, we need you. We need FirstNet. It's that simple. We stand ready here at the NYPD to assist you any way we can. I think I speak on behalf of my colleagues at Major City Chiefs and at the IACP that we stand shoulder to shoulder willing to support you.
I've been working on this for almost a couple years now since we signed the contract, and I've been looking on paper at all the tower sites and seeing how they're all connected with the microwave. But until you go out and actually see one being built, you actually get the reality check. This is actually happening. The steel's in the air. So if you get an opportunity, if you want to know where a site is being built, the one that's completed, give us a call. You can go out to the site, especially when you get it in site trunking mode, you can go ahead and test it for yourself. But when you see that 345-foot, 400-foot tower in the air, you really get a grasp of the 14 years we've been working to get that tower put in the air. And there's 89 to 90 of those. And probably over 100 now with all the counties that he'll show you who have joined. But it's going to be a great network for our interoperability needs, and that we can provide for you. But when you actually see that stuff in the air, you actually get a reality check that, you know what, this is actually happening. And I really didn't understand it until you actually can see it that's being built. So